Hello and good morning, good afternoon friends. Welcome to the CEC EduSec live lecture. Dear friends, in this session today we would be discussing on what is functionalism, and for this discussion we have once again with us in our studios Dr. Ajay Verma. Dr. Ajay Verma is Associate Professor in the Center for Philosophy, School of Social Sciences, JNU. So let's welcome our guest Dr. Ajay Verma and let's try to know what functionalism is. Hello sir, welcome to the EduSec lecture.
Thank you, Gitika. Dear friends, as you're already aware, we have been talking about different ideas in philosophy of mind in the series, and in that connection, we have already discussed substance dualism, and we have discussed different types of physical theses that have been proposed. And the last last two lectures, we saw what exactly is the idea behind what we call identity theory, according to which to every mental state there is a counterpart in physical brain state. In our last lecture, we had a very detailed look at what kind of criticism does this kind of view invite. So there's a plethora of issues that arise if we try to identify each of our mental episodes, any of our mental states with some corresponding physical counterpart in the brain. And in that connection, we should be able to recall that we saw that one of the central criticism to this theory comes in the form of what we call multiple realizability theory. Which is proposed by Hilary Putnam. So, according to multiple realizability thesis, the main idea behind it is that the same mental state could be realized in different species, and different species would have different kind of composition. So since mental states like pain, we know is common to not only human beings, but is common to several other species of animals. And since those animals have a very different kind of characteristic of their brains look pretty much different from ours. And the composition of different elements also varies, but nevertheless they do feel pain. They do have some kind of sort of emotional states, some kind of mental states rather that that human beings have. And so far as that is the case, there is a reason for us to believe that the same mental state could be realized in multiple different ways across the species. As a matter of fact, Hilary Putnam even suggests us that there could be even extraterrestrial beings which might as well might have an idea of what the pain means. No logical contradiction happens, at least. So they might have some kind of such similar states of mind, but those forms could be based on some other kind of chemical composition. And therefore, the same brain state, the central idea behind this thesis is that the same very mental state could be realized in multiple different states, or multiple different physical states. And so far as that is the case, the equation between the brain state and mental state, the presupposition, one of the fundamental presupposition in identity theory is that for all practical purposes we could say that for any particular kind of for any particular mental state, we have a sort of equivalent brain state. So if somebody is in that particular state, the particular brain state, then without dispute, that person, we would be able to ascribe certain mental properties which are supposed to be characteristic of that brain state to the person who has that brain state, and vice versa as well. So somebody who has a particular mental state, we should be able to say that this person must have this corresponding brain state as well. But if the multiple, if the mental state side of the equation could remain the same, while the brain state side of the equation could vary across, in that case, we are not holding on to the identity theory thesis in the strict sense of the term. So that was the idea. That was so Hilary Putnam's objection against identity theory in the form of multiple realizability thesis almost sort of proves to be almost a kind of impasse for identity theorists. And as a matter of fact, Hilary Putnam doesn't stop at that. He even further suggests that probably we shouldn't concern ourselves with the constitutional structure of the brain state. So we shouldn't so much worry about what brain states are composed of. Rather, we should focus on what particular what exactly is the function. How do particular mental states work? So instead of defining those particular brain states in terms of what they are composed of, we should rather focus on what these particular states do to us. So here, physicality of the brain states in terms of their compositionality, in terms of their constituents, is replaced by by talking about what is achieved by those particular brain states, those particular states. So the question of constituent elements, the constitutional structure of brain state is replaced by what functions those particular brain states perform. So say for example, I'm in say for example the given analogy suggested by Hilary Putnam. So if we talk about pain, one side of the equation remains the same, that is pain, and the other side, if we talk about the constituent elements of the brain states as it is realized across species, so constitutionally all these brain states are different, but what is common to all of them? In terms of which we could say that these are still all certain states which correspond to what we call pain. So something that is that brings all of these different constitutionally different brain states together is that all of them are equally good enough to account for pain in terms of their effect. So basic idea is that so far as any given state has some kind of causal relationship to what they are doing in terms of mental states. So far as that equation, the particular equation could be established in terms of their functionality, denying the constitutionality aspect of those brain states. So far as the question of constitutionality could be replaced by functionality, the job seems to be more or less done for us. So this is precisely what is this is the kind of lead that Hilary Putnam seems to suggest to us, and from this this idea starts gaining acceptance and momentum after Putnam's proposed thesis. So now we by this time we would already have a good inkling of what exactly is the idea behind functionalism, but to get a further grasp on it, I could read a small passage from Neil Campbell's book titled "A Brief Introduction to the Philosophy of Mind." So there he says functional definitions are very common. We use them to understand all kinds of things, from bodily organs. Say, for example, the heart is an organ that pumps blood through the body, to the parts of a car. So, we can understand things in terms of function, say, for example, bodily organs, like brain things, like heart pumps blood, so on and so forth. For that matter, even parts of car, like brakes, have a mechanism that allows a vehicle to decelerate or stop. When we define something in terms of its function, we typically focus our attention on its use or purpose, its functionality. To identify the function or purpose of something involves an implicit reference to certain causal relationships. That is, when we define something like a chair in terms of its functions, part of our understanding involves the idea that chairs play a certain kind of causal role. So, say, for example, in the example of pain, as already pointed out, all these different brain states across species are constitutionally different, but something that is common to all of them is that they perform the same function. That is, they have some kind of causal relationship with the mental state of what we call pain. All of these states trigger something in us tantamount to what we call feeling of pain. So there is a causal relationship which defines functionality of all these states, which is common across species. So therefore, that question, that objection that Hilary Putnam raises could be probably answered well in this way. So when human beings place their, say for example, the case of chair, so chairs play a certain kind of causal role. When a human being places his or her weight on them, a cause, chairs support their bodies in a seated position so that human beings don't fall down, which is the effect of it. This causal role is common to all chairs, at least all successful ones, regardless of what they look like or what they are made of, which is why it is more helpful to define what a chair is in terms of what it does than in terms of its design or composition. So basically, the idea here is that in chairs we now come in different designs. There are revolving chairs, there are wooden chairs, there are iron chairs. There are chairs, with like back support, which is smaller. There are chairs with head support too. So chairs could vary in designs. So if we, start defining chairs in terms of their, constitution, their elemental, kind of constitution. Of course, there is hard to, sort of have a consensus about, what should count as a chair in terms of, what it should be composed of, the exact, dimensions of it, and so on and so forth. But we rather understand chair in terms of how it functions. So a chair has its value, generally speaking, in so far as how well it performs its functions, its desired role. Whereas there could be certain other things, of course, the value of which would depend on what the constituent elements involved in the making of them. So, say for example, anything that is made of gold, is going to be, highly priced. That is because not what it is, its use value. It's because of the value of the element, the value of the metal that has gone into the making of it. So the value of the things that are made of gold is because of not what they do. Their value is because of what they are made of. So that so that would be placing value on what is the composition of a particular thing is. But as opposed to that, when we want to look at things as we generally do in terms of the function they perform, say for example, gold is not valued for what function it performs. As a matter of fact, if all the gold in the world were to disappear one day, there would be hardly any effect on our day-to-day work. We would still have probably things to eat. Air would still be there would be enough air and oxygen in the atmosphere. Things would hardly change for us. But say for example, another element, iron, which has much more of a use value than gold. Suppose now if that were to disappear one day, of course the world would look entirely different, and it could pretty well be a crisis situation for us. So therefore, functional use value is a different kind of value, and generally when we call things as so and so, we generally refer to them because of the use that those values that those things have for us, and generally we value them most of the time for how well a particular function is performed by them. So overall point here is that the kind of objection that Hilary Putnam has raised against identity theory, through by his example of multiple realizability thesis, there a good way out of that could be by looking at things not in terms of what they are made of, but by looking at things, even brain states for that matter, in terms of the kind of function they perform, what kind of causal relationship they have to a particular mental state. So there could be more examples. As a matter of fact, this is the example that that has been cited from a book by one of the scholars of philosophy of mind. But most the other writers, more popular examples are like clock. There could be different kinds of clocks. There could be analog clocks. There could be digital clocks. There could be, actually, as a matter of fact, for very, very highly advanced, scientific calculation of time. We also use atomic clock, which can divide a second to probably millionth of its part. So there could be all these different type of clocks and watches. They could have different technology involved in them. They could have different composition of in terms of what they are made of. So there are these earlier mechanical watches for which you'll have to wind up them up and so that they keep running on. So irrespective of what kind of design these different watches and clocks have, we call all of them as watches or clocks because of the reason of what they do. for us. All of them tell us time, and a good watch is which tells us correct time. In sort of which a good watch or good clock is which performs its function well. Another example is mousetrap. So there could be different kinds of mousetraps in terms of their design. There are mousetraps through which you which result in killing of the mouse. There are other kind of traps which merely trap the mouse, without involving the killing of them, and so on and so forth. But even though in terms of design, in terms of what they are made of, they may be different, but if we know them as mousetraps because of the function that they achieve for us. So this is the main idea in functionalism, not to look at things in terms of their composition, but rather to define things in terms of what they do for us. And also, one important question, one big question that would be asked is like, is there any physicalist kind of commitment in this theory? Because generally speaking, most of the scholars would, generally consider functionalism as a part of physicalism as far as philosophy of concern. But most of the philosophers believe that given the broad contours of this idea, there is no necessary commitment to physicalism here. So all we are saying is there are certain kind of supposedly some kind of states which result in particular kind of mental states. So even though functionalism is generally discussed under the purview of physicalism, most of the scholars believe there is no explicit and necessary commitment towards physicalism as far as functionalist thesis is concerned. So now, in order to sort of understand, before we go further, let's look at what involves what is the main point of transition from identity theory to functionalism. And for that, let me read another small passage from the same cited work. Campbell says, one of the obstacles to the type identity theory was the idea that mental states are multiply realizable. That is, there is reason to suspect that the very same kinds of mental states of which we are capable, example pain, etc., can occur in creatures that are radically different from us at the physical level. In light of the principle of multiple realization, functionalists conceded that it would be impossible to identify pain with any one kind of physical state, for it is extremely unlikely that a silicon-based life form could have any physical states in common with a human being. So there are all kinds of life forms. Say for example, some of the jellyfishes found in some of the islands, they don't seem to be eating anything, and they are completely transparent. It's very difficult to look for a different kind of biological systems in those jellyfishes. So for that matter, it will be very difficult to locate the exact brain counterpart. And also, another thing that we didn't discuss in detail when we were discussing identity theory, there is also something called brain plasticity. So at times, in certain kind of patients with certain degree of severity of particular diseases, a certain part of brain has to be completely removed. Now, it has been seen that in such patients, some functions that were performed by the part of the brain that had to be removed are taken over by the other remaining parts. So they sort of that extra sort of work, that extra function, is quickly taken over by the rest of the the brain. So this also comes as a kind of a block for identity theory, because there is no necessary connection between certain certain physical parts of the brain to certain mental states. So, as a matter of fact, all different brain cells have certain distinctions, but as well as there is some kind of commonality pervading among all of them. Otherwise, different parts of the brain would not have been able to take over certain functions for which otherwise certain other parts of the brain were earlier responsible. So this also poses a kind of challenge to identity theory, and these challenges, could be rather done away with if we start looking at the counterpart of mental state, in terms of what is their functional, counterpart at the other side. So now what so this is how generally functionalism gets an edge over identity theory. So now defining physical sort of different states in terms of their function. This is similar to the problem with trying to define what a watch or clock is by referring to its physical properties. Just as there is no one set of physical traits or properties common to all watches or clocks, there is no one set of physical traits or properties common to all panes. Since the functional definition of chair identifies something common to all watches, say for example, functional definition of watch, say for example, identifies something common to all watches in spite of their physical diversity, functionalists proposed that a functional characterization of mental states could succeed where the identity theory failed. So this is the main reason why why we should make a transition from identity theory. These were some of the deficiencies in identity theory which are addressed by functionalism. So perhaps a functional account of pain, for example, could identify something common to all pains, regardless of whether we are talking about pain in a human, in a Martian, or in some other kind of creature. So this way, some of the challenges which seem to be insurmountable in case of identity theory seem to be reasonably met by the functionalists, by the functionalist thesis. So now further from here, another difference is that in identity theory, the identity theory attempts to define pain in terms of its what we call intrinsic properties. The physical characteristic of pain has in itself as a neural or silicon, say for example in some other life form, or kind of a silicon event. To define pain in terms of its causes and effects is to define it in terms of its extrinsic properties, its relationships to other things such as stimuli and behavior. So another main distinction between identity theory and functionalist idea is that in identity theory, our focus is on the intrinsic nature of the particular states in the brain. So what is we are looking for what intrinsically belongs to them, and could be necessarily further on could be connected with certain kind of mental states, whereas in functionalism we are just concerned with the extrinsic properties. we don't want to go into those brain states to look for their intrinsic properties. We just are concerned with their extrinsic properties in terms of what kind of relationship those states have to other things like stimuli, or for that matter other brain states. So viewers, we will return. We'll continue our discussion and return after a small break. Thank you. Welcome back, viewers. So we were talking about the main points of distinction between identity theory and functionalist thesis, and we pointed out in that connection that that identity theory focuses on the intrinsic qualities, so to speak, of the thing. Of the thing that certain states are composed of, the sort of constituent elements, the constitutional structure of it. So, say for example, as pointed out earlier, I mean this could be understood, sort of in terms of, say for example, things that are made of gold are valued for what they are composed of. So there is because there is some kind of intrinsic quality that gold has. So there are certain intrinsic properties and there are some extrinsic properties what a thing is. So say for example, the intrinsic quality would include, say for example, in case if you're talking about, say for example, a ring. Intrinsic quality would be what is the metal that is made of. If it is made of silver, its intrinsic value, so to speak, is going to be much less than if it were made of gold. But functionally speaking, if it if we ascribe any function to it, then it would be just the same. As a matter of fact. In most of the cases, since the malleability and ductility in silver and gold is much higher, therefore they lack the kind of brittleness and hardness that we generally require for making some of the things. So for making several things for practical purposes, these two metals are going to be completely useless. So in that sense, there are no sort of intrinsic properties. There could be an intrinsic property of anything, and then extrinsic property would refer to what kind of function it performs, and so on, and so forth. In sort of in kind of a functionalist definition, pain could be defined in terms of its cause and effects in terms of in terms of its extrinsic properties, which includes its relationship to other things such as stimuli and behavior, and sort of relationship that one particular sort of mental state has with others. Thus, to sort of understand it further, thus it is often said that the functionalism defines mental states as abstract organizational states of complex systems. The reason for this is the principle of multiple realization. If we try to define pain by identifying its intrinsic physical properties, our definition would be true only of a particular species, or possibly only of a particular member of that species at a particular time, in which case our definition would be too narrow. By defining pain in terms of its extrinsic properties, we avoid this problem because the same causes and effects can occur in radically different physical systems, be they human beings or Martians. Even if Martians have bodies made of silicon, they can, like us, still suffer bodily damage and engage in pain behavior. So this is how sort of if we define things, if we look at things in terms of their extrinsic properties, as functionalism does, then we are able to address certain problems which otherwise stare before us. In case when we define certain things in terms of their intrinsic properties, as we do in the case of identity theory. So now, having looked at the main point of distinction between identity theory and functionalism, and having looked at how functionalism is able to address certain challenges that seem to be unsurmountable for identity theory. Now we could look at the kind of similarities and dissimilarities that functionalism has with behaviorism, because most scholars of philosophy of mind believe that functionalism is basically just a different kind of version of behaviorism, because in behaviorism also, as we have seen earlier, basically we don't want to look at, we don't want to consider, we don't want to take, brain states into picture at all. So what we call mind, intuitively the idea that we associate with mind is there is something inside of us to which we only have first person access, and it's something that's not available for view to others, so it's not public in nature. It is incurably personal in nature. So this is generally held idea. This is a part of folk psychology, as we call it, in philosophy of mind. So that in behaviorism, this problem is solved by not taking into account the what we call sort of mind at all. So mind is supposed to be sort of equivalent of how we behave. So our behavior is for all definitional purposes for behaviorists, what we call mind is as good as how we behave in a particular situation. So behaviorists, as we have seen earlier, seem to bypass the issue of mind altogether, and the concomitant challenges that are thrown into relief, that are that come into the picture, the moment we start looking at mind as something abstract, as something with first person access, something which is incurably, inevitably personal in nature. So all these problems are bypassed by simply sort of looking at mind in terms of behavior, and looking at behavior in terms of how behavior is a result of certain environmental causes. So functionalism also, in a more sophisticated way, relies on, the cause and effect relationship. So, we look at pain and all of the mental states in terms of what is manifest of them. And then, we want to believe that there must be some kind of a causal counterpart, of which they are in turn effect. So now looking at trying to contrast functionalism and behaviorism, we could say, and I'm quoting from the same work. Functionalism is often described as the heir to behaviorism, because the functional account of mental states is similar to the behaviorist account. Both theories treat mental states like pain as a complex set of behavior that occurs under certain conditions, and neither theory has much to say about the physical underpinnings of that behavior. Functionalism differs from behaviorism in two crucial aspects. So what we talked about so far is the similarity between functionalism and behaviorism, and then that similarity is that both of them treat mental states as a complex set of behavior that occurs under certain condition. And neither of these theory wants to have any commitment towards the physical underpinnings, physical presuppositions that are involved in making such kind of claim. So functionalism differs from behaviorism in two crucial respects. The first and most obvious difference is that the behaviorists vehemently denied that pain is an inner cause of behavior and identified it with behavior itself, or the disposition to behave in that way. While functionalists share with the behaviorists the idea that behavior is important for understanding mental states like pain, the functionalists think pain is only partially defined in terms of behavior. In addition, functionalists also think of pain as an inner state that causes pain behavior. So, what we can sort of gain, what we can sort of glean out from here is that functionalists do make an important distinction between pain as some kind of inner state, which is which sort of doesn't go counterintuitive. This is very much the common idea about pain. That's some kind of inner state. It's something that's inside of us. So, if somebody were to ask us, show me where the pain is, there's no answer to it. We don't talk about pain like that. So, pain is an inner state, and functionalists, want to stick with this, intuitive kind of an idea, which is, part of folk psychology as well, that pain is some kind of an inner state, and they want to believe that this inner state is what causes pain behavior. But for behaviorists, as pointed out earlier, there is almost nothing. They don't find a reason to differentiate between pain as such and pain behavior, because apart from pain behavior, what pain is, there is no definite way of defining it. we don't know, as sort of we talked about, the problem as pointed out by Wittgenstein, in his beetle in the box kind of example. Since I only know what is there in my box, supposedly beetle, but for all practical purposes, the meaning would be that beetle is whatever is in the box. So something that's inside the box, whatever it is, something that we cannot see, is for according to that analogy, pain. So it is as good as behaviorists think if this is the case, we could pretty well much even discount whatever is there in the box. So let's discount it altogether. Let's not even talk about it. Since we can never know for certainty that something is there, so for all practical purposes, it's just something like whatever is there inside the body. In the case of Wittgenstein's example, whatever is there in the box. So for all practical purposes, it's as good as nothing. So let's not talk about it. So a behaviorist wants to equate, want to obfuscate this distinction between pain, so-called supposedly some kind of an inner state, and the manifest part of it, which is namely pain behavior. So behaviorist thesis relies heavily upon obfuscating this distinction between the two, whereas a functionalist wants to keep the idea of pain as an inner state alive. So far as that is the case, he wants to sort of carry on some part of his thesis, as legacy from identity theory. So functionalism, in a certain way, has the best of both worlds. So from behaviorism, the idea of some kind of a causal relationship, is sort of borrowed from there. At the same time, the way behaviorism completely bypasses the distinction between pain and this intuitive idea, that commonsensical idea that pain has to be some kind of inner state, and its its manifest aspect in terms of behavior. So behaviorism relies on obfuscation between the two, whereas functionalism wants to think of pain still as inner states, the way identity theory would want to believe. But according to them, this inner state should be defined in terms of what it is made of. So, and what is it? What it is made of? It's made of some kind of a brain state, and brain states are certain chemical states, are certain electrically also could be defined, in terms of electrical impulses. So there is this electrochemistry involved. There is biology involved in this. So this is how they would want to define the inner states, whereas the functionalist wants to define the inner states only in terms of what they do, not in terms of what these inner states are composed of. So this is the point of departure of functionalism from identity theory. And since they want to yet keep the idea of internal state, pain as an internal state alive, so this is their point of departure away from behaviorism. So now, hopefully, it must be clear how functionalism has an edge over her identity theory, because there are so many issues that come up that are raised against identity theory, and at the same time, in a certain way, it's a move back towards behaviorism, but only taking the best part of behaviorism and leaving aside the weak side, the challengeable side of it. Now, having understood that, let's look at some of, so to speak, the byproducts of functionalism. Now, one of the sort of one of the, so to speak, byproducts of functionalism is that if we want to talk about mental states completely and solely in terms of what these inner states do for us, then in terms of what these inner states, the kind of function these inner states perform for us, do for us, then we know that we have given many of our work that we earlier used to do by ourselves, or several of these jobs now has been taken over by machines. So earlier we all used to sort of wash our clothes ourselves. Now machines do that for us. Earlier, so there are so many things that we used to do earlier for ourselves, and now we have sort of highly sophisticated machines to perform those functions for us. So the idea here is that machines perform functions as well. So if we define mental states completely in terms of what they do for us, then if those functions in terms of which we are defining particular inner states could be taken over by machines, would we call those machines as having minds? So that is the issue. The problem here is that if a machine does only the mechanical job for us, then intuitively speaking, we say, well, still machines are machines, and human beings are human beings. So there is a distinction between the two, the very clear-cut distinction between the two, because we are asking machine only to do some mechanical jobs for us. But now, we generally believe that thinking is something that machines can do. Why? Because machines don't have mind. What does that mean? Because machines do not have brain states. Machines do not have the same kind of constitutional structure that human beings have. Their constitutional structure is very different. Now, in functionalism, we want to do away with any talk of constitutional structure of things. We want to just define things in terms of what they do. Now, given this idea, now thinking is also kind of doing something. Thinking is also a kind of a function. Now, since thinking has a functional definition, now since mind has not a constitutional kind of a definition, the way identity theory sort of talks about it, since now mind has a functional definition, it's defined in terms of what functions it performs. Now, if those functions could be taken over by the machine, like a lot of mechanical functions, machines have already taken over. If machines could take over some of those functions that are supposedly definitive of mind, in that case, we may have to say, well, machines can have mind too. But so to derive this conclusion from functionalist thesis shouldn't be a problem, and there shouldn't be a problem considering it, given the presupposition of functionalist argument. It's a kind of natural conclusion that if machines can take over certain functions that we generally ascribe to mind, then we'll have to say that machines do have mind. But it goes counterintuitive. Somehow, it doesn't seem to be right to say that machines think. And this takes, sort of the functionalism to an entirely different level of theorization, which we call artificial intelligence. So the idea here is that intelligence is something that's supposed to be an exclusive domain of animals and human beings. It's supposed to be an exclusive domain of things with mind, of organisms with mind. So if you have mind, a properly, efficiently working mind, then you are an intelligent person. But if thinking is only a function and mind is defined only in terms of function, and if that function could be achieved in some artificial way, then there is a possibility of intelligence being artificially created, which seems to be very counterintuitive to us. But it shouldn't be it could be surprising, but it shouldn't be shocking, because we already have so many different kinds of, say for example, the simplest of machine, which does calculations for us. So calculation is something that is computation of things. It's something that only mind is supposed to do. Only organisms with mind would be able to put 2 and 2 together and say, well, 2 and 2 is equal to 4. But now we know that the function of computation, which was earlier believed is something that is that falls within the exclusive domain of mind, now this function has been taken over by what we call calculators, very, very simple computational machines. So since something that earlier involved some kind of mental operation, now is done by machines. So we should say that calculator has some kind of computational intelligence. Now, but sort of to call machines intelligent, which we will have to if we commit ourselves to functionalist thesis, comes along with certain issues. So like talking about transition from functionalism to artificial intelligence, we could again look a passage from Campbell's book. So he says, a thesis proposed by functionalists that mental states have nothing to do with the content and composition of what constitutes those states makes it plausible to believe that sufficiently complex machines could one day have states that would be equivalent of mental states. Since there is nothing that is intrinsic to mental states that makes them so, but the way they work, therefore, if machines could perform the same functions as mind, then there is no reason not to believe that these machines have mind. So as pointed out, if mind is nothing but certain kind of mental operation, certain kind of mental processes, certain kind of which involve certain kind of computational processes. So if those functions could be performed by a machine, then one important difference that we have always believed exists between something that's purely mechanical and something that's not purely mechanical, namely human beings, that difference somehow starts to disappear, which raises some kind of alarm, but which is some kind of an inevitable conclusion that arises from the functionalist thesis. So now to understand it further, the functionalists claim that mental states can be realized in physically different ways created a new interest among philosophers in the possibility of what we call artificial intelligence, a huge big area of study. not only in philosophy of mind, but also in physics. If the functionalists are correct, and complex systems does not require any organic brain like ours in order to have mental states, then perhaps a sufficiently complicated computer could have a mind. Furthermore, functional states are quite similar to computational states of computers running programs, if we believe that mind is nothing but a set of functions, a particular sort of exhaustive set of functions that are performed by what we call mind. So in both the cases, that is between computer programs, computational states of computers, and functional states, if both cases there is some kind of input, there is an internal processing of the information, and there is the resulting output of the form that there is stimulus, so-called input, which results in which triggers certain mental states, or sort of mental states which have a turn effect on certain other mental states, and which ultimately results in a particular behavioral response or output. So long as computer and its program are capable of realizing this kind of causal roles, corresponding to the relationship between stimuli, other mental states, and resulting behavior in human beings, the computer would have all the same functional states as we do. For instance, if we could program a computer with a robo body to look at the sky and say it's going to rain, reach for its umbrella and form other related beliefs, then the computer really would believe it is going to rain. Now, the important point is underscore the word believe. Computers are not supposed to believe, because belief is a brain state, something that has an organic component. So which but if a computer is performing is giving exactly the same output, then for all practical purposes we would want to believe that computers also could have beliefs. So friends, this is all we have time for today. We'll continue our discussion on functionalism in our next lecture. That's for today. That's all for today. Thank you.
With this note, thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for giving us a precious lecture. And dear friends, we believe that your feedbacks are very, very important for us. So do write to us at info.cec@nic.in. We would be meeting again very soon. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.